Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Dawah Bridge. You're watching Sky 847. I'm Bilal Ali, and this is the Dawah Bridge. This week I have with me, I can't say a guest, I gotta say family. I gotta say part of the Dawah Bridge family. I have with me brother Rashid Rose, who will be cruising at altitude today. And inshallah, we're gonna be looking at a very tricky subject, a very challenging subject, especially for Muslims to look at, but something that I think we benefit most of all from doing house cleaning as Muslims, and anybody else watching that, they can find this particular program of benefit because it touches the whole of society. And the subject we're looking at is addictions, exploring addictions across modern society. I'd like to welcome my brother. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam, Bilal. It's an honor to be here again.
The pleasure is mine, man. Like I said, part of the family, man. Part of the family. So
absolutely,
it's good that you could make the time and at short notice.
Anytime,
but I know that
anytime.
I'm aware that this is a subject that you take very seriously and you have some experience in on a professional level, and was just more than willing to just jump in the breach and just get into it. So
like I said, Bilal, in the brief, this topic is one that is very close to me in terms of my line of work. I previously worked in mainstream mental health, and I've seen the effects of drug addiction on some of my clients back then. And I said to you in my brief as well, I have lost clients as a result of addiction, overdose, as such, which seriously impacted on not just the clients themselves, but on the extended family. So it's a very somber topic, like I said, and one that needs to be looked at seriously, because at this time of the year, drug addiction is prevalent. Alcohol abuse is prevalent. This is the festive season.
So it's on a seasonal point of view.
Everybody let loose. New Year's,
yeah.
Everybody hang out and everybody get slaughtered. So for the legal drugs, let's call it alcohol, people go to the bars, but for the illegal drugs, the crack and the cocaine, etc., they worked in tandem. So it's a very poignant subject, one that really needs to be dealt with a lot of empathy, because a lot of people at this time of the year are really feeling the effects.
I think the
of drug addiction.
keyword you use there is empathy. I mean, recently I sat on a panel in South London. There was a panel in the Islamic Centre, psychologists, psychiatrists, myself, a sheikh, and really trying to deal with the issue of addictions from a practical point of view, but with empathy was a thread that ran throughout the whole, the various people that spoke and answered questions, because, from a Muslim point of view, there is the person that has substance misuse issues, and then that is coupled with religious guilt. So that addiction, that form of addiction is compounded, but addiction in and of itself is a bit like the bit of the iceberg that you see. It's not the real problem. It's not the real, the real issue, but it's the one that's apparent.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to maybe start the first talking point of today's program by asking you to just speak a little bit about maybe some of the hands-on experience that things that you may have observed quite close up professionally in terms of addiction, because some people might think, okay, it's only people of a certain age, it's for the young crowd, or it's only people of a certain background because of defamation of character that, say, mainstream media has on African Caribbean people. Like it's a black issue, or it's mainly men, or it's a gender thing.
Indeed.
Just open it up.
Like I said, in my time working with drug and alcohol clients in the mental health profession, it ranged from, it's all ages, all ethnicities, all groups of people, the rich, the poor, whatever. Addiction don't discriminate, but it says the more wealthy you are, the more accessible drugs can become to you, because you have the means in which to buy it. For the poor people, it's the exact opposite, because what they have to do is to steal to obtain these drugs. It kind of works both ways. But come back to the question, I mean, it affects people in many different ways. Because if you have the means to go out and buy drugs, it becomes recreational.
That's a term.
Because you can afford it, so you can go out and buy a certain amount at a certain time. So it becomes, they call it recreational drug. So it's a plaything. For those who can't afford it, they would like to experiment, but they don't have the means to maintain the intake to keep you level-headed or to keep you on a certain level. So once you can't afford to maintain that level, what happens then? You end up stealing, which creates a whole social problem in itself. So you end up stealing, maybe petty crime, and doing little thief in car stereos. You might steal from your mom. So
in the family, so the disruption might start.
We would come on to the whole family, impact
yes,
on the family. So it starts from a very minute structure. You might steal little things in the house. Your parents probably wouldn't miss it. Little jewelry here and there. But it's the fun, this habit. So the means to access drugs is important. I remember one chap said to me once, I'm on cocaine, but I can afford to maintain it, so it wouldn't affect me. If you can't afford to maintain it and you want that fix and you can't get that fix, then is when the problem kicks in.
So that's making a big distinction. You could say whether it's income or class, but we say income. But we are aware that oftentimes in more affluent parts of British society, it's known, whether it's people that work in a city who have high incomes and have high jobs that need, they think they need a stimulant to keep them alert and to work, excessively long hours. Sometimes some medical practitioners.
We are just about to mention, I wouldn't say they're on, they take a lot of alcohol. We know the fact, I know GPs, it is known, consume high levels of alcohol in order to maintain a balance. Because of the stress and pressure they put under. But the point is they can afford to do that. But the point is, if you cannot afford to maintain your fix when you need a fix, that's when the problem kicks in.
So, like I said, so it's a big problem throughout different segments of the society, but it's like one segment of society becomes apparent. It becomes more apparent because if this person's scrounging around outside of a train station telling you a story that, what happened is my electricity key ran out and that I've got a young child at home and I need just £1 for my key, and or they got these stories or people begging, that's one end of the food. That's one end of the food chain.
It's clearly visible among certain groups of people.
So it's manifest.
It is because, like I said, the people who can afford it, they would be indoors.
The elites, clean car,
indoors, they would
functional.
Yes, absolutely. They would
maintaining good jobs and things like
so
this.
So they're not out there begging for a pound or two to do what they need to be done. They can maintain that. So the so-called beggars are the ones that's on the street who really can't afford that. And these are the ones I shouldn't say we need to focus on, but the emphasis is placed on them. But in both sides, in both structure, those who have and those who don't have are in the same boat.
Do they take the flack? Those that are from the arguing from that perspective of maybe the poorer class or the less fortunate economically, they take the flack because it's seen as a drug problem because their stuff is manifest in the streets. But there's another school of thought or another argument that says those who are wealthy that would cruise down to certain spots in South London or West London, certain drug spots over the weekend to buy their recreational drugs, that they are fueling drug wars. And this becomes competitive turf for big industry. So they are part of that whole problem also. But they're not blamed. They're not often coming for the news. But they are, on an under, kind of not esoteric, but kind of on a hidden level. They are as much part of the problem.
One of the points we have written down here is about the impact on the social structure of society, because these so-called have-nots. They are, like I said, they are visible to the police. They are visible to everybody. They look different, so they pose a social threat.
They're dysfunctional. Their dysfunctionality is apparent.
And the percentage of arrests is higher among these people.
Right.
So they pose a problem in terms of law and order, while the elite and let's say the nice boys don't really get arrested. There's no need for them to get arrested. They can afford to automatically bail themselves out of that particular situation. Yes, of course. So the ordinary man on the street who is addicted to drugs is in a very serious predicament because one, he can't afford to have his fix. He's under the eyes of the law. He's also impacting on the health system in more ways than one. We heard only last week on the news, the NHS is under tremendous pressure. People going into the emergency services and abusing the doctors under the influence of alcohol.
That's another problem,
And like I mentioned in the notes, certain drugs or certain substances are illegal in interpretation of some people because it cannot be taxed. Let's go back to 1920, when alcohol was seen as a backwater. You have to produce alcohol in some...
They call it bootleg. They call it bootlegging.
Bootleg, that's what they call it. Until governments then find a way to tax it and capitalize on the benefits of it, then it becomes okay. But the potency of alcohol hasn't changed between now and then. Matter of fact, it's become worse. Look at places like Russia, where vodka is consumed in high proportions because of the intense cold, but the impact of that on society is tremendous, on the health system is tremendous. So we have to understand it, not just the individual is affected, which is what we want to look at as well.
Okay.
The impact on the family, the impact on society, the impact on the economy, all of the above.
Because we know that, like, from an Islamic point of view, you know, the Quran speaks about, as in translation, saying that, you know, that intoxicants are the handiwork of the shaitan. You know, it's like an inroad for Satan to get into your life and to wreck your life. But also Allah speaks in the Quran about being, you know, forgiving for the soul that has wronged themselves. That, you know, Allah is, the gates of repentance is open for you if you turn to Him, make an effort to stop going down that road, and you turn to Him for help, you know, in prayer, in supplication, that, you know, this is the avenue that's open for you to repair the damage that you've done. And the reason why I make a big point about that again is because I know that because alcohol is forbidden in Islam, and there are Muslims that are out there that struggle with drug and alcohol problems for whatever reason. Hopefully we can get to talk about triggers in a short while, but because of that reason, people have this compounded religious guilt. They isolate themselves out of shame and fear of anybody finding out and their reputation being ruined. And what they're not doing is accessing help. You know, what they're not doing is accessing help or even addressing that initial problem. You know, so I just wanted to bring
Bilal,
that
I
to
mean,
light.
on that issue, the first thing about any kind of recovery, any kind of rehabilitation program is for the individual, of course, he would know, must admit they got a problem. And they talk about shame and guilt. From the Muslim perspective, it is such a disgraceful
It's
act.
taboo, man. This is taboo,
you know,
man.
such a disgraceful act that they don't want to be known to be doing X, Y, or Z. So they hide themselves in corners, which is to benefit to nobody. So they basically rot away. Instead of making, because the first stage, you have to admit that you got a problem and seek help. And if it's something we need to be looking at, maybe are there enough centers around the UK to enhance or to encourage Muslims to come forward with addictions? I don't know, because we discussed this some time ago. We were exchanging ideas about counseling services. I mean, there are quite a few amount of counseling services in the UK. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But how accessible they are, I don't know. I really, really don't know. And you're talking about prevalence and drug abuse and so on between certain cultures. I don't know if it's more prevalent. I don't know if it's more prevalent between one culture or the next. But it would seem that certain cultures seem to get caught up more in drug abuse than other cultures because of the lack of access to money. And the more deprived you are, the more difficult it is for you to obtain the funds to maintain that addiction. But coming back to the whole process of seeking help, are there enough centers around the world?
Flagged up, known,
available,
well accessible.
How accessible they are and how discreet they are. You don't want to be seen to walking on the high street, you know, from customer perspective. That's not the way to do it.
Not with a fluorescent jacket saying I have a problem. You know, it's not the way.
You can't do that. So we as Muslims in this profession need to be more, let's use the word clinical or smarter in terms of how we approach or how we deal with this issue, encouraging Muslims to come forward.
So we need some sort of, I mean, I know there's, like, for example, a Muslim helpline for youngsters, Muslim youth helpline, but maybe we need more, quite possibly, confidential avenues of referral, of self-referral.
Child Help have it, the Samaritans have it, everybody, we need that too. And if we're going to look after our own, we have to put that in place. I'm talking about as soon as possible, because we cannot be naive enough to believe that Muslims aren't addicted to drugs. There are plenty out there.
Okay.
I mean, Brother Salam, I want to tell you straight up. He encounters that every day. So they are out there, but how accessible help is to them?
When I worked in the when I worked for the prison service on Suicide Watch, a lot of people that were at high risk of suicide were people that came into prison with drug problems, and of the many that came into prison, there was a significant number that were from Muslim heritage or Muslims, you know. So it's a real issue across society, and because our scripture and our standard says, this is something to avoid, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get that there are those amongst us that won't get caught in that snare. So we need to be realistic.
Absolutely.
We need to be realistic. I want to even push the boat out a little bit more. Because we're speaking about addictions, we're talking about alcohol and substance misuse. I'm going to give you a short definition, working definition of addictions, and I bring something else to the discussion. So it's, one definition of one of many, but one psychological journal describes it as: addiction can be defined as a compulsive, excessive, and difficult to control substance use or other initially pleasurable behavior that begins to interfere with ordinary life, work, health, or relationships. The reason why I draw emphasis and intonation on the word other is because, as you know, in the statistical diagnostical manual, for mental health, there's a DSM-5 or something there right now. This manual that clinicians use to help define mental health problems, psychological problems. They've also added non-chemical, non-narcotic addictions. Gambling is definitely in there. Gambling is definitely in there. Some research is suggesting that, for example, the person that they've done tests where they've put some sort of device on a person's brain, attach some sort of device on a person's or individual's brains that's been involved in the studies, and when they gamble or when the horse race or whatever it is, there's certain parts of the gambling process that the dopamine part of their brain lights up just like somebody who's taking heroin or cocaine. So they put that in there. And also, because I sat on a panel recently, and the issue of porn addiction came up.
I'm just about to mention that, because I don't know if that's mentioned in that manual, but I've been reading where that has now been classified by certain therapists as an addiction.
I believe so.
Because with the access
I
of the
believe it.
internet.
I personally believe it is from my experience, and I think there are some journals, some, let's say, academics who definitely classify it as such. Definitely classify
because
porn addiction.
With the access to the internet, I saw research recently says about 1 in 5 people access that material on a regular basis every day. 1 in 5, and that's rising. This is why the government is now in a serious battle to combat certain websites from showing certain things, because it's tearing apart society. Society is becoming more immoral as a result of.
And one of the scary things about porn addiction is that we don't really know what the long-term ramifications are on society, because it's not as if to say this is something that never existed in society, but this is something that was metaphorically on the top shelf and literally on the top shelf, and out of the way. But now, Google.
Because you can't measure the same
young
way.
people.
Because you can't measure the same way you measure a drug addict is clearly visible to you. He's downtrodden, he's beaten up in the street, an alcoholic. But someone predicted porn is completely, you can't manifestly see that person. So it's in the heart.
It's a spiritual torment for people.
And that affects them in many different ways. Which, I'm glad that definition has been brought up, because I know for a fact, I've spoken to people, I've counseled people with addictions, with that problem. But I know it's an addiction which some people struggle with, like gambling. Some people, I heard cases of people losing, talking about Michael Jordan, prominent basketball star, had a massive problem with gambling, lost millions and millions. So people, it's a compulsion.
And he had millions to lose.
And he had millions to burn. He had millions to burn. So it's like the more you have, to come back to the same point you make, the more you have, the more you can access what you want. And the less you have, the least you can access what you want. So those who don't have it always have to be begging and stealing to get what they want.
Can you imagine somebody that's a regular person that works on a transport system, or a regular blue-collar worker on the building site, different types of jobs, but they have a gambling problem. Michael Jordan, he had millions to burn, but somebody might have expenses, and they can't pay their rent. They can't make their rent because of this addiction, this gambling addiction, and it affects, family. From my experience working on a professional level, it's the relationships.
Bilal,
it's the relationships
it's one of the things I have written down here, because the impact of addiction in the family is tremendous. Because yes, working with clients, you see them on a one-to-one, and they'll tell you your problems. Yes. But while you're struggling, their family is also struggling as well as. So in most cases, you're not just dealing with the client, you're also having to pick up the pieces with the family falling apart.
Support
Your
network.
brother and the sister is stressed out. The mom have to safeguard her jewelry, and the father have to safeguard his bank card. So all of the above.
You're right.
The sister have to make sure her perfume and so on is secure because it impacts on the family life.
You when you mention that, something that comes straight to the front of my mind is the film made by the African-American film producer, director Spike Lee.
Okay.
So he makes his film, this film is Jungle Fever, right?
Okay.
But there's one of the main characters' brothers is a crackhead. So he comes around, and when they see him, it's, oh my God, he's here because he's just disruptive. He's not, they don't love him, but he's dysfunctional. The mom's team.
Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson is a crack
yes,
addict, what's the classic line in the film when the mum says, "Where's my TV?"
Yes.
He borrowed the TV. And he said, "Mama, I smoked the TV." Because that
This
means
is
he
exactly
sold
what
it,
happened.
and that TV,
This is
the
exactly
money
what
went up
happened.
in smoke. So
exactly what happened.
you know, with humor, he put that in the film with satire almost, but at the same time, extremely, disruptive. I hope that in the second part of this show we can go into how drugs are used against populations, possibly in arguments related to. I hope we can get into some Dr. Abdullah Omar Johnson and things of that nature.
We'll touch on that.
Just want to put it out to the audience that's viewing though. The question for this evening is: are we right to discuss addictions as Muslims, or is it something that is not an issue and we can leave it let alone? The number is 0203 515 1234. You're most welcome to calling. But until we hear from you, I'll continue chopping it up with my brother, Rashid.
Yes.
So the question about the porn addictions, I heard some shocking statistics from a psychologist recently who said there are, out of the 10 countries in the world who have addictions to pornography, or the most used, most accessed countries, with pornography most access, that 10 of them were Muslim states.
Let me hear that again, brother.
I think I nearly chewed my tongue there.
Yes. I mean, I that is news to me, really. That is,
I mean,
I'm not totally surprised.
It may warrant some further clarification. It may want further exploration.
I'm not totally surprised, but it's a revelation, really. It's a revelation because that is something else. Yeah,
And on a spiritual level, you think about it, there are some who suggest that this, things of this nature, not directly, but indirectly, as have been foretold of, in the sense of that there will become a time when Muslims will be attacked on a spiritual level in their own homes.
Okay.
So in the past, historically, there was a place that we knew was Dar al-Islam, and the land of
place
disbelief.
Of
but it was a sanctuary, like a geographical place where certain type of behavior and practices and ideas were kind of kept at a certain type of bay.
All the barriers are down.
And if there were non-Islamic ideas, which is something that would come in the institution, and you could scholastically debate them. But now, because of this dish, and because of this internet, it comes with much benefit. You know that we can download lectures from the best scholars and get clarification on different Islamic issues, on a whole host of subjects. But at the same time, like we've mentioned before, the dark side of that internet exists.
And it can be used for bad. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they use it to do a lot of bad. And these are some issues we need to scrub upon, because the internet is a very, very powerful tool. And it's hard to police, even though they're putting measures in place in certain websites to police it. Now they're talking about this dark web, where you heard about the dark web, where a certain group of people access it for some devious reasons. You don't want to go into that at this point in time. So there are two levels. There's two levels. There's just the internet on that surface, but it's just dark web where some serious stuff go on in there. Once you get into that level, you're in serious trouble. So the internet is a powerful tool, and it's a very influential tool. And I'm not surprised in Muslim countries it has penetrated Muslim countries in a way that you wouldn't imagine. But Europe and America, of course, are at the forefront as well, but when it starts affecting Muslims, it's serious.
The genie's out of the bottle.
It's serious.
We hope to hear from you on the other side of the break. But until such time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.